Hey, everybody. Thanks for so much for joining us. I'm Garry Adelman. Who's on my left there in the blue shirt?
I'm Kris White.
We're both from the American Battlefield Trust, and we have somebody associated with the trust as well. Who's that in the white?
Kris Mackowski.
Emerging Civil War and Copey Hill Civil War Fellow here at the Trust. Guys, for a few years, I've been in touch with this guy named Tom who's been working on an app, and I think it's safe to say there's not another app like it. And Kris Mackowski, can you confirm you don't know what I'm talking about and haven't seen it yet?
I know nothing other than the invitation you sent me to sit in on this.
Good, good. And Kris White, you have played with this app a little bit, is that right?
That's right, and I'm very excited that I have now a soundbite of Kris Mackowski saying, "I know nothing." So
I'll say it again.
put that to
I
good
know
work.
nothing.
Uh, so here we go. We're looking at this app. It's called the Battle of Gettysburg, a battle animation like you've never seen before. Gettysburg 1, 2, and 3, fully animated. What I've done here is open the app. Okay, note that there's some stuff on the top you can see. We are at day 2, and it's 5:30 p.m. Note that I can move in 5-minute increments anywhere else. If I want to see what's going on at this place, oh my God, where is this? This is the peach orchard. You see this at the bottom of the screen. And if I want to see what the peach orchard looked like 3.5 hours earlier, I would go like this. Oh, there's nobody there, but there's a Union skirmish line there. Okay. This is an app right away where I could zoom way out. Let me go to level 1 as high as possible. And I could click this animate button and watch all of the main actions of the Battle of Gettysburg. Now, you might be able to barely see some of Longstreet's countermarch happening over here, but I could watch the entire battle in about 40 minutes or so. Now, let's see, I want to see those Confederate troops moving. I can just go like this, okay? And then I click animate again, and you'll see them coming into position here. Oh man, who are these guys? Well, if you take these units and you roll over them, you see on the lower right that I am on Alexander's Battalion, the Bath, Virginia Artillery under Taylor right there. If I go to the next one, I can see which other one this is. So what you're gathering right away is that this has great detail to it, okay? You can animate it, you can move in small increments, so I can watch them actually play out. Sorry if this is a little bit laggy, this is Zoom after all. Or I can just pick another time and watch it go, and see what that is. One last thing before I turn this over to you guys, and we'll keep playing with this thing and some of the features here, is that one of the things I like the most is here I see Anderson's Georgia Brigade coming in here. If you don't have these memorized, scroll over it. It'll tell you Anderson's Brigade of Hood's Division of Longstreet's Corps of the Confederate Army. Is that I can zoom out from here and see what's going on elsewhere at the same time. Like I can see the larger picture. I can also see Union preparations over here if I want to. And I could even see what's going on at Culp's Hill at 3:05 p.m. And who's moving where and getting ready for what attack at this time. So let me pause for a second and see. Let me go with Kris Mackowski first, because this is the first time you're seeing this.
Wow. I'm delighted at the different levels that we can look at this, the really far out, we can zoom right in. I like the fact that you can see the simultaneous action so you can compare things. One of the favorite tools I have with the Fredericksburg area battlefields is the series of troop movement maps. And you can see over time on these maps how troops move, but of course they're static. And here we can see that in an animated way, and we can look at things simultaneously and see how resources are shifting. What a wonderful way to illuminate what's going on in the field.
Cool. Let me actually pose that to Kris, because I know he likes to be the foil sometimes, so I'm going to place him into that role. So one of the great things about this, as you said, Kris, is that you're looking at not one map and then another and trying to track things around. This is actually, things are actually moving before our eyes, which is kind of cool, depending on what part of the field that you're on. But Kris White, can anybody actually know this? How do we know all of these things? And just, do people know exactly the way all these units moved and without standardized time at what time? Kris, what do you think about this?
Yeah, I think we have a lot of close guesstimates at times. You know, we don't always have the line of march. We don't always have the line of battle. One of my favorite, you know, stories comes a few months after the Battle of Gettysburg. John Badger Batchelder is putting together his initial kind of findings for the battle and coming up with this idea to put together a history. And he goes and he meets with a large number of officers. And one of the brigades he met with was part of John Caldwell's division who fought in the wheat field. And he comes away frustrated because every regimental commander of those 5 regiments, put their regiment on a different portion of the line. So nobody agreed with anybody on that whole situation. So I think there's a lot of things we know from the official records, from you know, post-war accounts that are valid, but we also have to understand that we don't always know at every moment where everyone was on the battlefield, because they didn't. In fairness, this is the first time most of these guys have arrived anywhere near Gettysburg, and some of them are coming in the middle of the night, some of them are showing up in the morning, and of course you have the stress of combat and other things taking place. But I think it's a useful tool overall. We have a number of books that kind of play this out in static maps, and now seeing it play out live reminds me of some of the old Sid Meier's video games and things we could play back in the 90s and early 2000s.
Now, one of the things
go ahead.
Oh, I kind of like, you know, from a preservation point of view, you can see like, oh gosh, here's what actually happened on this piece of ground that we might be looking to save, or that we have saved, or, you know, we're going to make an argument about. Maybe a downside to that would be like, you know, I could see someone saying, oh, well, why didn't Pettigrew's people just stay in that row of houses that was right there? Why did they move forward across that forest? So kind of understanding what you're looking at and why you're looking at it might be just something to kind of remind people of the context, you know, historical actions over a modern battlefield, and why that's useful and what the drawbacks might be.
I think this is a great thing that you brought up, because I happen to be over here on the first day. By the way, there's a grid there. I can remove that grid. I can take the roads on and off. I could go with a more pure experience where you're seeing more of this. I could have sort of a daytime view versus a nighttime view. I can list the location, like there's Hers Tavern. Again, there's a lot of flexibility with this. But what I liked, and Tom, the creator of this, is dying for the trust to make use of this. For instance, in our current appeal, many of you know, thanks for your membership, by the way, for you members and supporters who are watching here, is that something we're trying to preserve right now is this country club tract. That includes the tennis court, these structures here, the parking lot, some of the woods abutting against parkland over here. If I animate this part, you'll see the 8th Illinois Cavalry actually fall back over this land, specifically in groups. This is something that I think wasn't on his original part. I mentioned it to him and he added it. Tom is really good about taking people's suggestions about this. For years, he's been trying to get historians in the field to watch this thing, you know, and some of whom see this as a very useful tool, other of whom still kind of prefer their Lano map atlas, or, you know, Gettysburg in maps by Gottfried, or to look at their old Batchelder maps and things like that. So what I have found interesting is that I think that this battle, the way to understand it is to really follow the brigades. And here's a graphic way to sort of see, you know, the way that this plays out. And I noticed on the first day, like when Joe Davis's guys were coming up in this area right over here, I noticed that, you know, the 11th Mississippi wasn't there, because they're not there on the first day. And then all of a sudden they magically appear on the third day, to which I've moved, by the way, because I know someone on here really wants to see Pickett's charge play out. Here it is. It's 3:05. This is like what Faulkner said, right? For every boy, not 14, you know, from the South, it's still 3 p.m. on July 3rd, and that chance is still there. Guys, what else to add?
I'm just marveling at what the technology is allowing us to see and understand here. I think,
well, one thing I'll say is that Tom is very serious about criticism. And although it's not on the app, I have seen them. He showed me the back end tech of this, and he has 8,000 footnotes that relate to Harry Fonce's books, the Lano Atlas, other books like this, Coddington's Gettysburg, A Study in Command. So you know, he's worked really hard, and he's anxious to deal with people's, you know, sort of criticisms of this. But let me just say, let me ask either of you guys, is it possible to get it 95% right? Can we actually do this?
I think you can get it 95%. the way there. I mean, Lord knows that this battle is more studied than any other Civil War battle. It's one of the most studied battles in all of world history. You know, so there's a lot written about it. But, you know, we always have to remember, and this doesn't come down to modern historians, it comes down to the guys who actually fought this. They fought with each other for the decades after the war about who did what, who was where, and when did things happen. You know, so you always have to, as a historian, you know, take things with a grain of salt. It's all about coming up with, you know, the most reliable sources and what is backing up those sources. So, you know, I think you can get there 90 to 95% of the way there. Will never be 100% accurate, especially because there's so many moving parts on a battlefield. And I think that's what gets lost on static maps. You're looking at one snapshot of one moment on one battlefield. In this, you're seeing it happen almost second by second, as these men are moving across the field, or I should say these blue and yellow and green lines moving across, red lines moving across the field.
Yeah, I think Kris is right that, you know, so long as the sourcing is there and you've got something to fall back on, you make your best guess. I mean, we do that all the time as historians. It's like, here's the evidence, and at some point we might have to just make a judgment call about what that evidence adds up to and means, and you know, leaving that trail of breadcrumbs for our readers becomes important.
You know, bringing up something you said earlier, Kris, I kind of cringed for a moment because I noticed that in Pickett's charge, I saw Pettigrew's guys falling back before Pickett's guys, like from it. And by the way, that's my impression. I think that Pettigrew's guys got there first and fell back first. But I could only imagine people like, really? No, I want my ancestor to have fallen back second. And here's the classic, you know, North Carolina versus Virginia, you know, sort of approach and argument that Carol Reardon and others like really have, you know, made in their various works. Now, one thing I wanted to point out is that I like that he does this too. He makes these units so they're not just blocks. Note that they're not all the same size, and he shrinks them as they suffer casualties. He takes the period of time in which they did the battlefield, you know, suffered casualties to the degree that they're known, and then shrinks units, say, throughout the course of the wheat field. And he also, do you see how the 20th Indiana isn't just over here, if you can see my cursor? This is known that he took two companies, Colonel Wheeler, while he was in command, to fill a gap that was made by the 99th PA. And by the way, we can go back and look at that if we wanted to see when the 99th was here, and then they pulled out. So he took two companies, I think it's B and H, and put them over here. But what I like here is I'm going to wager that we're going to see the 17th Maine after these guys fall back, Tilton, Schweitzer's guys, I forget which, after they fall back. We know that the 17th Maine famously refused their line. And you can already actually see sort of that it looks like he broke that up in such a way so that it's going to be refusable. Let's see if we can play this out really quick, because
this is blasphemy, because only one Maine regiment refused their line at Gettysburg.
Oh my God, Kris, you set me up perfectly to talk about my favorite Chamberlain quote. The diplomat, another Maine unit, I think it was the 19th Maine, say, Colonel Chamberlain, after the war, I hear that you say that the 20th Maine did the hardest fighting at Gettysburg. Well, I think the 19th Maine played the pivotal role at Gettysburg. And Chamberlain, the diplomat, said, yes, but isn't it all the slats in the fence that keeps the pigs out of the garden? And I just love that. I mean, this dude knew he was probably claiming a lot for the 20th, but wanted to be a diplomat and give credit to all, at least in that particular private conversation. So
I'd like
Tom
to,
has, yeah.
I'd like to give a shout out to the 17th Maine, because I think John Haley's memoir from the 17th Maine is by far more readable than Joshua Lawrence Chamberlain's writings about the war. So 17th
good.
Maine's
Now,
great unit.
Kris, now we're in your area. I mean, you have a lot of areas at Gettysburg, Culp's Hill and the Wheatfield are I think the two you like the most. Anything you want to check out here in detail?
It shows the nature of this fight. You know, some of the formations on Stony Hill there, as they're moving through, I don't 100% agree with, just based off of George Prescott's report after the battle. But you know, again, it goes back to what one person says versus another. But it does go to the confusion of the battle that took place here in the Wheatfield. And you can see the 115th Pennsylvania going back. At some point, the 17th Maine will stop, be intercepted. There they go. They stop and then come forward. I haven't watched this. I'm just saying what the history tells us. They'll get thrown back into the fray. And it does show the crazy nature of this battle. Winslow's Battery D, 1st New York Light Artillery pulling off. Here comes the 17th back up and over. 5th Michigan back into the action. So, you know, it shows just how many moving parts are happening. And whenever you're out on a tour as a historian, this also goes to show you can't talk about everything, especially not in real time. If we're going to talk about the wheat field, you could do it for 8 hours, even though the fight took, you know, less than half of that time. But in reality, you just can't tell all these stories in a coherent way.
Gary, I have a question. I noticed that the colors of the regiments change here. Like, for instance, in the Southerners, we've got a darker red, we've got a lighter red. I've seen a darker blue, a lighter blue. Any rationale behind that?
Yep. I actually don't know the answer, but I'm going back to see. Yes, I think it's after when they come in fresh, they're darker blue. And then when they start to suffer casualties, I think that's it. Although what I didn't see, it could be also when they're under fire. That would be a good question for Tom to answer. But you note that the guys on the front line are lighter blue, and these other guys maybe haven't seen as much of the elephant at that point. I don't think it's by brigade. I'm pretty sure it has something to do with the combat. Let me note, by the way, that I've spent maybe 3 hours with this app before, and pursuant to what Kris and Kris both said, I mean, I haven't touched this thing. I mean, you know, like I said, you could play out all the main parts of the battle from above in 40 minutes if you just kept it on animate that whole time, kept clicking animate. But you're only looking at either very broad or very detailed. You can't see everything play out all at once. One of the things I went back on, and I've never thought about this before, is I know that James Smith's battery, which was at Devil's Den, actually, when they took their 3 guns that they still had left and they unlimbered right at Winslow, right as Winslow was pulling back. Again, that's not in the official records. That's in Smith's book. And I'm sure Tom's watching this. So Tom, there you go. Maybe Smith has to move over there first. I wonder now where he has Smith. Now Smith's still here. So where does Smith actually go when some of them fall back? Oh, I see. He's only got 3 guns still up there captured by the Confederates. I'd have to go back further actually to see what happened to Smith's other guns. Oh, there they are. So I wonder where they go. This is the type of thing I like most about this app, is trying to watch and grasp it all, because we've been forced to place this into our heads. Now, if I were to watch this, I would no doubt take certain things with a grain of salt. I mean, none of us, me, you guys, Tom, Edwin Coddington, and Harry Fonts, and when we make, oh, let's see where they're going. It looks like they are headed toward the wheat field. Let's see. Oh, pretty cool. That's pretty close, actually. Smith's gun's heading over here. But, you know, all of us are just forming an impression, and it ends up being almost a sort of a virtual reality in our heads about what's happening around us, right, guys? Is that close to how you guys see battles when you're trying to interpret them?
Yeah, I always look at them as blocks of ironically, whenever I learned how maneuvers worked, we were using sugar packets sitting in a diner. So I always see them as, you know, turning this way, turning that way. But also, you know, I've had the opportunity to attend reenactments and be part of it, so you get a little bit of an idea of how the marching maneuvers would take place. But yeah, this is kind of how I played out in my head, between video games, between reading the tactics manuals and other items, and of course looking at the static maps. So it's this is a tool for the ultimate, you know, Gettysburg person who wants to learn more about it, who might be reading a book and doesn't understand how things are, you know, play out. And then you could go to this section of the map and start to watch it. Like here with the opening assaults on Culp's Hill, you can see that John Jones's men are going to make contact first. Then Jesse Williams comes in to make contact with the Federals, and it takes George Maryland Stewart's brigade much longer because they have to kind of wrap around the Confederate left to Union right to make contact with the New Yorkers that they're about to take on.
Yeah, good
Gary, I have a question. Is there a way to look at this in the historical landscape, or is it just the modern landscape?
I think it's just the modern landscape. I mean, to achieve, meaning, could you overlay like a Batchelder map or a Warren map under this? Not that I know of, but trust me, everything we say here, Tom is going to scrutinize. Tom's big goal, you know, is not to make money, although there is a fee associated with this. I don't know what it costs. But you know, his goal, his hope, you know, as largely a project he spent thousands of hours on, is to make it useful How can people use it? And I can tell you, I'm glad that I have it. That's another thing. Like, there's a few things I brought up. Like, what about being able to see the notes for all the movements? And he said, there's 8,000 notes. I can't. It doesn't work. It'll clutter the thing up and it won't run as well. So I don't know the answer to that, but I'm not aware. I think you're seeing all the options here. Animate the grid, day versus night, and Culp's Hill's night. So let's make it a little harder to see, because you wouldn't be able to see that terrain any better. But I know that he's probably going to consider that and either discard it right away or make it happen. That's what I know about Tom.
I do have to say that, you do have the problems with the base maps themselves, the historic base maps. Google's giving us a nice, beautiful layout of what the world looks like from above. But, the John Batchelder maps that he put together, the elevations are incorrect. Distances are incorrect here and there. So you're dealing with, hundreds of maps that have been produced over the years, base maps. And the base map is the bottom of the map, basically what everything is on here, the Rock Creek, the roads, all that, and then you overlay these other items on top of it, such as the regiments and items. So those base maps don't always agree with even the historic ones, of the distances, height, and all that other good stuff that you need on a map.
Yeah. Now we happen to come right to this thing, Kris, that we both know about, this famous incident with 137th New York, which I think suffered 137th casualties on 137 casualties on Culp's Hill. We know that they famously refused their flank. They have a traverse, but we don't know where that traverse is. We know roughly where it was, but we don't know exactly where it is. So, I mean, just in watching it, it brings up issues. A, what else is going on? B, what sources is Tom using to accomplish this? In some cases, there are whole brigades that are largely black holes where we don't even know the order of the regiments in certain times, as Kris mentioned at the outset here. So, but the more I play with this, the more I enjoy it, to tell you the truth. I like, sometimes he shows the intense fire going on. I don't know if that's every time, but I see it enough. So
yeah, this is
I
them
think,
going over the, to the traverse right now. 137th initially is engaged on Lower Culp's Hill. The 71st Pennsylvania hung out there probably a little longer than the New Yorkers would say the Pennsylvanians hung out there on this map, because they famously just kind of peace out on everyone. And then, Stewart's brigade pretty much envelops the right end of the line. Probably coming down here now, it would be the 6th Wisconsin, 14th Brooklyn. Will start to show up to help support that flank. There they are.
Let me go back here a little bit. What is up with these tough guys to the 137th? That's one company going to attack a Confederate regiment in the flank, apparently, with some support, of course. And look, it worked.
And drives them back.
It just begs the question. It begs questions. That's what I'm seeing a lot of. Oh man, here's Green's guys, these New Yorkers, and then here's like a member of the Iron Brigade, and then a member of Cutler's Brigade, and then a member of, if I'm correct, Samuel Sprigg Carroll or Webb's Brigade up here, the 71st. I mean, we got 4 different brigades in 4 different regiments in a row. Does that speak to the chaos at Culp's Hill, guys?
Yeah, I mean, it does, the confused nature, but it's also them trying to cover as much ground as possible, because the left end of Green's line undouble files, meaning that they go from 2 ranks into 1 rank and start spreading down the hill, but they're unable to have the entire 5 regiments do this because the Confederates come on them so quickly. So you're filling in gaps with the Oswego Regiment up there, the 147th. You have the 149th New York. There's some shade thrown at them after the battle. At least one officer who supposedly said they should retreat. They don't retreat. 84th New York comes in, and the 84th New York, also known as the 14th Brooklyn, claimed they got all the way down to Spangler Spring at the bottom of the map, and we know that is not true. They never made it that far. So they're confused about where they are on the hill, but they're trying to cover as much ground as possible. And I think that goes back to, you have to read all the sources and then weigh all options. Could the 84th New York have gotten that far? Absolutely not. Could other people cover these different sectors of the ground? Absolutely. So I think that it's interesting to see how the interpretation as a historian plays out.
One of the things too, going back to your rogue company going down and attacking, as I'm watching, and you talk about how it begs questions. And so I think, someone who wants to learn more about Gettysburg and doesn't maybe even know what questions to ask could watch this and be like, oh, what's going on there? And they can give them something to kind of hone in and read more about and learn more about what's going on and what's this action. So to me, it's a really good tool for sparking inquiry.
Good. And you see that I've moved over now to the July 3rd morning action. Now, I do want to start to wrap this up. So let's just look at two more areas before we do it. Then we'll talk, we'll entertain anything else. So I want to note that we haven't really talked much. We showed some of the early cavalry actions, but is East Cavalry Field actually covered on here? Let's see, we're on July 3rd. Let's go over to when that might have happened in the afternoon. And while I'm doing that, no, there is no proof that the Confederate attempt or their plan was to try to come up behind Pickett's charge. So you see he's including East Cavalry Field here. It looks like I've come in on some of the intense moments here where Lee and Custer are really battling it out over near Rummel's barn, which you see in the mid left there. So I just wanted to note that that's there. Now let's also look over to South Cavalry Field, which is raging at the exact same time. Do I have this right? It looks like I do. And of course, the American Battlefield Trust has been very active working with the Park Service to try to secure a bunch of land on South Cavalry Field here too. I know I've seen Farnsworth Charge on here before. So guys, is there anything else you want to check out before I maybe pull up the website real quick and then wrap this thing up?
I will leave it to Kris Mackowski.
No, I think I really just kind of like the actions here. I think if we're looking at a modern map, one thing that might be helpful would just be road names or being able to turn them on or off.
Let's see.
And then,
so there we go. So
okay,
I just,
so
I
there we
just,
go.
yeah, I just showed the roads, but where are the names? So yeah, Slider Farm Lane.
There we
Let's see
go.
if that disappears with it. Yeah, it does.
Okay,
So it
very
does
good.
work, but I note though that it's not really evident where the Emmitsburg Road or what the Emmitsburg Road is till I zoom back out and I can see it. So that's good. Ask and you shall receive, Kris.
Very good, very good. And then maybe a long-term thing, because it's a whole nother layer of stuff. But since we are working with the modern landscape, having little pop-ups that say, here's this monument, here's this monument, here's this monument.
Ooh.
It's a little beyond what we're looking at here. That's for version 2.0. But trying to figure out ways that you might be able to use this modern landscape to interact with the historical stuff we're looking at in ways that kind of help shed a little bit of extra light.
Good. I like that. And by the way, that data is out there already and you could toggle it on and off and you could say, hey, here's the 13th New Jersey's monument and the map doesn't show them near their monument. Why is that monument there? Are the accounts wrong or did they not own the land? I think that would beg even more questions. Let me note that there are two other tools I didn't highlight here. Find a unit and you can scroll through. You can do a search function or you can go by name or number. If I want to see where the 11th US is, it'll just take me there. Same thing with the location. If I want to go to, let's see, randomly, the Catherine Gwynn Farm near Meade's headquarters, here it is right at center. So if I zoom in, it's going to zoom in right on that spot. So it's also a helpful thing. Instead of searching around your map, you can actually locate battlefield features for those who are maybe at the nerd level instead of the full-on animated loser level that we discuss sometimes. So let me stop this share, and then I'm going to pull up one other thing. So here it is. I already sort of showed you this. This is the website. There's a home. It tells you about the project, how to use the app, because this is special. It's APP. That's all caps. So that means there's something special going on here, like you've never seen before. Like I said, what happened here, how to contact them. You follow your ancestors and things like this. So it really, there's like a support thing that you can link to from it. There's a few narrated battle vignettes. You got user comments and testimonials. So you guys can check these out yourself. And of course, I'm sure that somewhere on here is the way to sign up for the app. And again, we don't need to get in that. They do have a YouTube channel where they play out some animations and narrate it. So I just wanted to say you have this in support. Guys, one last question for both of you. You looking forward to Gettysburg 161?
Yes, 100%. Only because being out on the field with you guys is always a treat.
Cool. Did we just invite Kris White? Did I just invite Kris Mackowski to come with us? Is that what I did?
I think you did, because usually he's not with us because that is his wife's birthday week.
My wife's birthday, yeah.
So usually he's like, oh, I can't come along with you guys. And, so
I've
don't
done
know.
a lot of day one with you guys.
Okay, good. And Kris White, Gettysburg 161.
I mean, it's always the it's the prom for Civil War losers, I think, is the best way. Every year, everyone gets together for 3 days. It's not just 161, it's 160, 159, 158. It's the place where everyone gets together. Sometimes you only see these folks once a year, and I think it's a lot of fun seeing the reenactors, the historians, just the tourists all around town. So looking forward to it, especially our ultimate Get Us Nerd quiz in conjunction with the Adams County Historical Society.
Yeah, we hope to see you a lot lot of y'all at the anniversary, as well as at the Ultimate Gettys Nerd Game Show that'll be playing out live on the afternoon of June 30th. And I think by the time this video goes live, tickets may or may not be available. So check them out through the Adams County Historical Society. Guys, anything to add?
No, I think it's a great tool for those of you especially looking to study for the guide test. This doesn't have an affiliation with it, but if you're looking to become a licensed battlefield guide at Gettysburg, this is just another arrow in your quiver to learn more.
Yeah. I think it's a wonderful application of technology in a way that adds illumination to a story that maybe we think we know, but helps us see it in a way that makes it more concrete. So I think it's wonderful.
Good. I don't think I could add to either of those things, guys. Thanks for taking time out of y'all's busy day, while one of you more busy than the other. For everybody watching, thanks so much for watching, for checking this out, for all your engagement and for all of your support of battlefield education. Kris?
And preservation.
Bye. Thanks.
Hello, this is Trace Atkins. To stay up to date on all the latest and coolest videos, please subscribe to the Trust YouTube channel. Preserve, educate, inspire.